Let us drink to the great deaths of 2023. Every year, of course, great people die. And maybe it's morbid of me, and I am a morbid guy, but some deaths inspire me more than others. This year, 2023, a lot of great people died. Sandra Day O'Connor. I think she was the first female on the Supreme Court. Henry Kissinger, Rosalind Carter, Harry Belafonte, Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett. That I miss. Dianne Feinstein, Pat Robertson, who was quite a character, very a little bit sketchy, but a guy who achieved a lot. Silvio Berlusconi, same thing. The Italian, Italian Prime Minister, very sketchy guy, but he made it, right? He did, he fulfilled his life. Norman Lear, who, made All in the Family, great artist. Cormac McCarthy, who wrote, I think was overrated by a lot of times, but he wrote Red Meridian, which is just incredible. The poetry of violence in that book is incredible. David Crosby, great rocker. Matthew Perry, funny guy. I'm sorry about it. He was a tragic life because he was drug addicted, and he couldn't get away from his addiction. That's tragic and sad. But three deaths in 2023 inspired me, made me see what humankind can be, how we can behave as human beings to make something of our lives that is dignified and great and overcome challenges. One is Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, everyone hates Henry Kissinger and everyone loves Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is a very, very controversial character. I don't want to talk about his politics. When I think of Henry Kissinger, I think of his accent. He has a German accent. But the thing is, he immigrated from Germany to the U.S. when he was 6 years old. There's no reason for him to have a German accent. He was, raised in America, 6 years old. No one else in America who came to America at 6 years old still speaks with such a strong accent. It was intentional. He used that accent to tell people who he is. He said, I am an outsider. I'm Jewish. I am German. I'm an immigrant. I don't have the privilege you have of being born here and being born into a dynasty of whatever. I have to struggle for all that I had. And he did. And he said that with his accent, by keeping that German accent. And I think that is a great lesson for all of us. We talk about it's okay to be different, but at the same time, we group everyone into groups. So if you're black, you're black. You're not, a poet, a musician, whatever. You're just black. You're part of the group. If you're white, you're white. You have whiteness. And we divide everyone into groups that take away their individuality. But in fact, greatness as a human being comes from your difference. If you are different from other people in any way, maybe it's a disability, maybe it's a skin color, maybe it's you're just a nerd, or you're an introvert, you don't have good social skills, whatever it is, any difference that you have, any difference gives you an opportunity for greatness, gives you an opportunity to do something and to be someone that other people cannot do, and to stand out, and to succeed in some way that other people cannot. Part of being successful as a human being, part of making something out of your life, is recognizing what makes you different from others, and using that to do something unique and special that others cannot do, to give the world something that others cannot give. And I think all of these lessons of life are in this one little fact that Henry Kissinger, one of the most powerful of his time, one of the most powerful leaders of the world, artificially kept the accent of an outsider. I thought that's something of greatness. Then there was Tina Turner. I nearly cried when Tina Turner died. And it's not because I loved her music. She's not one of my favorite music. I'm more like Bob Dylan and Led Zeppelin. So, but Tina Turner had a great story. There were two things I loved about her story, and one was that she was, abused. But she never really, she talked about it, but she never really identified herself as a victim of abuse. She used it a little bit, but she identified herself as an artist, as a singer and a rocker, and as a person of ambition. That's how she identified herself. That's who she was. And she overcame the oppression of being in a misogynistic, brutal relationship, and she went on to build her own life. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, in any kind of, whether you're a man or a woman, in any kind of abusive relationship, turn into victims and just give up and are beaten. She was not beaten. She won in the end. She went out and she became Tina Turner. And that takes a huge strength of character. That takes not only talent. She had a lot of talent, of course. That was a big plus point. But it takes determination and grit and character. And then there was a second element. She had her big hits, out of the 70s. I don't know when it was. And then in the 80s, she came back as an old woman. She was old. She came back and she put on her, sexy black stockings and the wild hair, and the sexy lipstick, and she became a star again. She came back. That was incredible, and she just did it. She did not say, I'm too old for this now. I can't do this now. No one wants an old woman, singing, being a rock and roller. But that second career was not, her greatest hits. It was new music. It was a new career. She wasn't just doing the same old thing again, or being rediscovered, or doing her, goodbye tour. She was reinventing herself as a new artist. And that is incredible. And these are lessons that we can all take if we define ourselves by our challenges, by the things that, that happen to us, we're beaten or abused, then that will define us. But if we have the determination and the vision to go on and to create something else, something better out of our lives, that is greatness. That is greatness. So, Tina Turner. This is the lessons I learned from her. Who else was? One guy I really loved was Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett, only that one song, Margaritaville, I loved. But the thing I loved about him was that he was not a one-hit wonder in that sense. It was just, he only had that one hit. But he leveraged that one hit into an entire billionaire's life. He leveraged it into a series of restaurant chains, Parrot Head restaurant chains, resorts, travel, concerts, fandom. He took that one opportunity that he had, the one moment of genius, that one song, and he just went with it. He didn't say, soon another, I'm Bob Dylan, soon another song will come to me and I will build up a library of great songs and I will go down in history of one of the great rock and roll. He didn't do that. He said, I have the one hit and I'm going to take that and I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to make something out of it. And if you can do that, that is a key to greatness. Taking that one good thing that you can do and just running with it, making the most out of it that you possibly can. And he did that, and I admire him for that. I like him for that. And that's a role model in that sense for all of us who have some kind of ambitions to make something out of our lives. But we may have only the one hit. But that's not a tragedy, having the one hit. You can do a lot with that, as per Jimmy Buffett. And then there was, just happened recently, I think Christmas Day, Wolfgang Schäuble died. If you're an American, you've never heard of Wolfgang Schäuble. He's a German politician. He was, 80s, 90s. He was big, and he was active as a politician in Parliament up to recently. He had a sickness and illness, and he died from this illness. It wasn't even reported. The report I read didn't even say what it was. But the thing that I loved about him was that he was, and I say this knowing that it's a kind of a vicious pun. He was a stand-up guy. He was an honest guy. He was not a populist. He was not a polemicist. He was not a demagogue. He said it like it was, more or less. He did a lot of politics, of course. Politicians always have to, sugarcoat things, and that's fine. But you could depend on him to be doing good, to be a good politician. He was a conservative, so a lot of his politics I did not agree with, but he wasn't a populist conservative. He wasn't in it just for the power. He was in it because he believed in what he was doing, and his life was dedicated to doing good in politics, being a good politician, and making this world a better place as he understood it. And he stood by that, and he did that, and he was just this kind of politician. And I think a lot of politicians are out there. We notice the populists and the guys who are screaming and yelling, but a lot of politicians are out there dedicated to doing a good job according to what they think politics should be in politics, and working with other people, and doing democracy, performing democracy. And this is a guy who did that. But the thing, of course, that made him stand out was that I forget even when it was, the 90s or something, he was shot by a guy with schizophrenia, and he was paralyzed from, I think, like the waist down or something like that. So he lived from then on in a wheelchair. And he was in Parliament in a wheelchair, and he did his politics in a wheelchair, and he did everything in his life in a wheelchair. Everything. But he kept doing it. He didn't let that stop him. He didn't say, "Oh, now, I'm a victim. I can't do this." He said, "No, I can do everything that I did before, almost, but I have to do it from a wheelchair." And he took, photos of himself, publicity photos in a wheelchair, and he appeared on television in a wheelchair, and he did all these things in a wheelchair. And he represented also. He was a leader, or in the presidency or leadership or chairmanship of various disability associations. So he he worked on that. But he didn't identify himself as a man in a wheelchair. He used it a little bit, and he did not pretend it was not there. But he identified himself as a politician whose job it is to do politics. And that's what he did. And being in a wheelchair was just, and the trauma of that attack was just another thing to overcome in life. And he overcame it. He did it in a wheelchair. And he's not the first guy to do things in a wheelchair with a disability. A lot of great men had some kind of disability. And speaking of wheelchairs, Roosevelt, FDR, was in a wheelchair. He contracted polio probably when he was a kid. And when he was an adult, before he was president, the polio came out and paralyzed him more or less from the waist down. I think he could walk a little bit, but he was mainly in a wheelchair. And he tried to not get... It was no secret, but he did not let himself be photographed in a wheelchair so that people would not see it. But it didn't stop him. He was not president when he was in a wheelchair, when he was confined to a wheelchair, but he went on to be president for 4 terms after he was confined to a wheelchair. So that did not stop him at all. Of course, he comes from a rich family, so he had a lot of support. Okay, I'll give him that. But the thing with disabilities is you're still a human being, and you still can do what human beings do. And every human being has to face challenges in life, and the measure of how we are as humans is not our circumstances, but what we do with our circumstances, what we make of our lives, and how we live. Whether you're privileged or underprivileged, it's what you make of your life, how you live as a human being. And these 4 people, I think I miscounted earlier, 3, there are 4 people who died this year, set an example, a role model for me personally, for how to live as a human being. And I hope that I can at least try in some modest way to measure up to the examples these people set. And that's what I wish for you this year also, that you can find a measurement of being a human being and live up to that. Here's to 2023, here's to 2024, and here's to life as a human being.